A brief look backward tells us that public education was created at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, and all of us pretty well in this room know that. It was designed to meet the needs of an industrial society. It was edgy, it was innovative, it was unique in its time, it had promise and possibility built into it, and it was exactly the right system that needed to be developed for that time. Unfortunately, it continues with us. So I've often said, be careful when you create something that's sustainable, because it may sustain itself into places that it doesn't want to be or need to be anymore. But it was predicated on some really important ideas, that learning happens in the individual. You heard Ron already talk about the collective. We know a whole lot more about learning now. It's not just the individual. It's not that they got it wrong. It's just that it's incomplete. And we know that the collective responsibility at this point and how ideas actually move along. It was built on a very early notion of knowledge, that knowledge is stuff. It's static. There's a canon. We also know that learning involved storing the stuff. And so our theories of learning at that point in time were predicated on the ability to store it. Why? Libraries were in short supply, didn't have enough information. So we were now not in an industrial society, and we have an abundance. And so we've gone from a curriculum of scarcity to a curriculum of abundance. And that's a fundamental shift in a learning knowledge society. So we've cast ourselves into a very, very different society than we were in at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century. But we have a schooling system that was built then. In 1882, a committee of 10, and look at the committee we've got today, wonderful. A committee of 10 designed school. 10 guys. That's it. It's really interesting to both Stephen and I. In 1891, Canadian Education Association was created by 2 teachers, and it began. 1892, a committee of 10 designed school. They stated, every subject which is taught in all secondary school should be taught in exactly the same way, to the same extent, to every pupil, as long as he pursues it, no matter what the probable destination of the pupil may be or to what point his education is to cease. They determined education would be 12 years. 4 years of high school, preceded by 9 years or 8 years of an elementary school. They determined exactly how much time should be allocated to every subject. They were accused of creating an overcrowded curriculum. Their recommendations impacted teacher preparation and credentialing, and that preparation that they recommended at that time is still in place today, as are the number of minutes allocated to subjects, as are the subjects they deemed to be the most important. And they are the subjects we have today. It is from their committee of 10 that a committee of 15 were struck to create the elementary curriculum that was predicated and based upon the work of the committee of 10. And 2 years after that, that curriculum was brought into being. As we start to think about it, it becomes really important to remember that everything at that point in time was the creation brought about by 10 people working collectively to create the education system, of which Ryerson picked it up in Canada and said, this is a wonderful education system for Canada. At exactly the same time, the invention of the production line came about. And it was deemed that it was the perfect match for what the Committee of 10 had just designed. That students could be processed in batches, year groups, defined by the age they were. We just call it grade. We could take a curriculum that was designed by the Committee of 10 of preset facts and procedures, and they could be fragmented, torn apart, and delivered in bite-sized pieces in preset order according to a scope and sequence, which became the program of studies or the curriculum. Teachers were trained how to deliver these effectively, and students were assessed on the preset facts and procedures. Sound familiar? The aim was to create a standardized product. The products were sorted, and some were accepted, and others were rejected. It was an idea that came out of the Enlightenment that some were more worthy than others to make it through the standardized process, because we only wanted a quality product at the end. And so, as we begin the work and we begin to be our next steps in here, we need to remember that everything that was set down in the way that it's taken up today as fact, as just the way things are, is the invention and creation by 10 people led by the then president of Harvard University and adopted universally throughout the world. And so our task in terms of going forward with CEA is as audacious as the Committee of 10 in terms of being able to find our way forward and setting Canada apart in addressing the barriers, knowing our history, and knowing what we need to undo in order to take our step forward. And we've heard that this morning already